Hi, welcome back to the channel. Michelle, and today I'm doing homeschool update video. So we have just finished the first 6 weeks of our homeschool year. This is our third year homeschooling, and this video is all about group family subjects. So I have a 10-year-old, 6-year-old, 3-year-old. Mainly my 10-year-old and 6-year-old are the ones participating in group subjects. My 3-year-old is welcome to join us. But I thought it would be great to make separate videos, so I have one for my 6-year-old, one for my 5th grader, one for my preschooler, just so you can click on the ones you want to see. So this one's all family subjects. So what we do as a family is science, history, geography, philosophy, and social justice. So I'm going to be going over how those have been going so far. So I'm going to start with science. We use core knowledge science. We have since we started homeschooling. Again, this is our third year. So we're finishing up 4th grade. Yes, it's catered towards my oldest, who's in 5th grade, but last year we did a K through 5th grade unit study on the human body using multiple core knowledge units. So we're still on track on 4th grade. So we finished up investigating waves, and now we are on structures and functions of living things. So it has been going really well. We do science twice a week, Thursdays and Fridays, and that has worked really well in our schedule. We've always done science twice a week using core knowledge. It's really easy to adapt. So some of the things we've gone over is we did an experiment with celery and watercolor to learn about the structures of a plant and the functions that they serve, which was really fun. And again, core knowledge is completely free online. I'll link them down below. Check them out. I recently put up a video how I use core knowledge language arts. I have how I use core knowledge science. If you wanted to see those, check them out. They did a research report on a specific animal, and then they had to look at the structure, or they had a choice between an animal and a plant. Both my kids chose animals. They had to look at a specific structure in that plant and the function it serves. And we talked about different organ systems, tissues, things like that. So my 10-year-old chose a mud puppy, and my 6-year-old chose a cheetah. And obviously my older one could do more thorough research. She used National Geographic website. And then we did have some books on amphibians and reptiles. So she looked in for mud puppies in that book. And then my 6-year-old, again, I used National Geographic, read her the information and showed her a Wildcrats video on cheetahs. And that was her sources of information. So my oldest one outlined and did the research report, while my other one just kind of narrated to me the facts and stuff she learned about cheetah, because there was an outline that they had to fill out. So she just orally did that with me, because I don't think a 6-year-old needs to write a research report at this point. But I think it was important for my oldest to be able to look at credible resources and be able to pull that information. What we've recently learned about is the human eye and the function that has. So this is my 6-year-old. She drew an eye in the pupil, and she answered the questions about the function of the pupil and why it changes shape. And we did some experiments in the mirror with different lights to see how it affected our pupils. And we even talked about things like cochlear implants and what happens when you're born, you can't see or you can't hear, the different technology advancements that can help with those things. So again, really like core knowledge. I love that it's free. I love that it's thorough. I love that it's aged in a particular way. You don't have to stick to that age. Like I've said, we're on 4th grade for my 6-year-old and my 5th grader. My 6-year-old definitely picks up on all the information. She was able to answer a lot of the questions aimed towards my 5th grader orally, and she can pick up the little bits of information we've learned over the years. They know the human body really, really well, especially since we've done that extensive human body unit. And on top of that, my oldest had been doing puberty and all the changes that includes in her health unit. So they're very knowledgeable about the body, and they often can answer the questions right away without any prompting to me. So that's telling me that core knowledge is really solidifying in their heads, and I really like it. And it's easy. You don't have to buy a bunch of materials. It's quick. Some people complain that the teacher guides are really long. Again, once you learn how to use it, it's open and go. So I just keep all the printouts in this book, and the teacher guides are on my tablet. I have the student readers on my big Mac desktop, because it's pretty much the size of a TV. We just read it through that, and it's been going really well. The kids enjoy the hands-on experiments or demonstrations. They enjoy the information, the video links, all that. It's gone really well. So if it's not broke, don't fix it. Core knowledge, great. So next I will do philosophy. So we've been using this, Philosophy of Kids, and it's been going really well. And we just do it on Fridays, usually over lunch, and it's just simple questions. It will go over a question, a philosophical question, and a specific philosopher and their ideas behind that. It always has this kind of like quiz or true or false thing, and depending on how you answer shows which way you lean on that, if you agree with the philosopher or if you disagree. And that's probably my kids' favorite part, is it's kind of like taking little quizzes and coming up with the answers. But we've gone through some really good questions. For example, should you be rewarded for the efforts in school? Should you let little things bother you? Is it your duty to give to charity? Will having fun make you happier? Should you ever tell a lie? Are there times when you should be violent? So it's really getting into some deeper level thinking. I think this is a critical age, especially for my 5th grader, where she's starting to analyze her perspective and opinions and the world, and really solidifying some opinions of her, not, just taking mom's opinion or dad's opinions or friends' opinions, but really coming up with her own ideas and perspectives. So this is a great time to introduce philosophy, and my 6-year-old is starting to think more deeply on things too. So it's just been really a lot of fun, quick and easy, but I think engaging them in that deeper level thinking is a good idea. Next, I will do geography. So we are doing United States history and United States geography. So my core thing I'm using for geography is core knowledge, geography of the Americas. It's the 5th grade unit. And I just print out the handouts that go with that. And with core knowledge, that breaks it into different regions of the United States. So we just finished learning about the New England region, so the northeast top corner there. And it goes through all the states with that and gives some brief information about that. And then what I do after we go through the region of information, we start going through each individual state. So we've been taking 2 states every week and diving more deeply into the information of that state. So I've been using this book. It's Junior State Notebook, and what I like about this is it comes with the state flower, it comes with and these are stickers that you put in the book, state bird, it comes with the state tree. And I will have my oldest fill out the information for the state she chooses, and then I will have my youngest fill out, like put the stickers and stuff out, but then I will fill out the information. So for example, this is my 6-year-old. I filled out the information, she did the stickers and the pictures, but it goes over the capital, the abbreviation, the date of statehood, the rank, and an interesting fact. So I'll have her orally tell me what that interesting fact is, and I'll write it down. I do not make them write a famous person down because they're 10 and 6 and they honestly don't know that many famous people, that I could tell them that, oh, this person lived there, and they wouldn't know who it was. So we skip that aspect of it, but I do like that it goes a little bit deeper. So for example, this is Maine that my 10-year-old did. So she put the information down there, and it's just a really quick, fun way to learn information. So where are we getting the information we put in there? So we use a couple resources. I own this book. I got this from the library for $0.25. It's a bit outdated, but still has, the basic information of states. And then I bought this from their books for geography, and this is just a little bit more, in my opinion, fun information. So little facts and figures about them. And then occasionally I will get books from the library. I recently picked this one up, and it just has some interesting facts you probably wouldn't know about certain states. So while they're filling out their information, I'm just reading these books. I also picked this one up recently. Again, it just has that interesting facts and information. And then one thing we're doing with geography is every week we have this recipe booklet, and it's Eat Your Way Through the USA, and it has a bunch of different recipes for each state, usually like an appetizer, entree, dessert type thing. So we will go through and pick one, and of course my kids always pick the dessert. We made blueberry pie for Maine. We made Boston cream pie for Massachusetts. What I really like about it, it has these little food facts, so it tells you specific things about that state in regards to foods. So for example, Maine has 90% of the lobster consumed in the US. So little tidbits of information like that I think is really helpful, and they really enjoy baking the recipes that go with the state. So a little more hands-on thing. My overall goal with geography is to have my kids have an understanding of where the states are, so basic geography skills, and a little bit of information about each state. I'm not expecting them to memorize the capitals and all that information, just where the state is and a little bit about that. So the last two would be history and social justice. So I'll do history first. So we are using O Freedom Conscious U.S. History Curriculum, and this is a secular history curriculum. It was written by a Christian, but it's completely secular, and I have to say I'm loving this curriculum. I'm so glad I made this choice. So we started by going over early civilizations, so ancient native cultures like Mesopotamia, Mesoamerica, things like that, life before colonization, the New World, words make worlds, so talking about different terminology used for certain tribes and native people. So it has, right here, we read the spine book, and there's multiple spine books, I'll show you in a minute. And we have our read aloud, and then we have our discussion questions down here, and then we have some experience things to do. What I love about this is it's mainly discussion based. I really like, especially talking about history, opening up that discussion. I don't need a lot of little crafty activities or things like that. I want to have deeper meaning level conversations with my kids, especially since we're talking about some difficult things in history. We don't need to craft with that. We need to talk about it as people and really work through that, because some of the things are difficult and struggling to talk about, but I don't think that means we should shy away from talking to our kids about it. I think there are definitely age-appropriate ways to talk about the difficult things in history. And I think if we don't talk to our kids about that, then we're just perpetuating the systems that already exist. You know, the idea that racism doesn't occur until you're adult is ridiculous. There are children experiencing racism, so they should be taught about it as children. Just because there's no age-appropriate level to learn about some difficult things, because there are people going through those difficult things. Our children are experiencing those things in the world, so they should learn about that. That's my opinion on those. So that's why I am such a proponent of talking about real history with children. So I have found this to be perfectly matched. You know, there's nothing we're talking about that I'm like, whoa, that's too much. It does go into deeper subjects and more difficult subjects, but in a very respectful way, and really giving the person you're talking about or the group of people their voice in it, which is so missing from a lot of history. And I like that it's bringing in such multiple perspectives. So let's go over some of the spines here. So a different mirror. And again, you read a couple pages out of these books. It's not like you're reading, you know, a chapter a day type thing. And then I'll show you the one mistake I made. There's an indigenous people's history of the United States, and then there's an indigenous people's history of the United States for young people. I accidentally bought the adult version and not the kids version. So be aware of that. There are two versions. There's a kid version that says young people and an adult version. This is useful that I am reading for myself, but the young version is meant for the kids, and it's just more condensed information. The older one I would definitely think would be great for high school level. It's got a lot of information and facts in it. This one is broken down, so it's a lot easier for the kids to read. And I usually read it out loud to the kids. And again, it's just a couple of pages, so this is definitely more age-appropriate reading level-wise. Howard Zinn, I love Howard Zinn, People's History of the United States. This is the young People's History of the United States. Gotta say, I've been absolutely loving this. And yes, does it go over some difficult topics? Yes. Does it do it in an age-appropriate way? Absolutely. I think Howard Zinn did an amazing job with this, and I think teaching our kids about some of these struggles in history is really important. Some others are stamped. We just started this one. Again, I've read this prior to starting this curriculum because I thought it was a great book. So again, I really like that this is written to the child and definitely written in a more modern tone, and it gives them kind of their voice throughout. Some things for Columbus, talking about the early colonization, I really like this book. I like that it has some documents in here from Columbus's journal, and one of the assignments is to read through it, and you really get a picture of how Columbus viewed Native people or indigenous people. And it really shows you what he thought about them and how he really didn't see them as people from the second he met them, and how that influenced and impacted colonization and how that impacted the indigenous people living on there. And this has been really, really a wonderful book. So again, I got this off Thrift Books, really cheap, but it's a wonderful resource. So for example, we go over the song 1492, Columbus Sailed the Ocean Blue. That's a pretty typical song. It's a song I had to learn in public school. And there's an alternative version that talks about the indigenous people that has a link to it, which I really, really love. So this one is the only book I do not really like. And it's just because it's a lot of information. And you read multiple pages. This is the only one I would read through it and condense it and kind of summarize it for my kids, just because it was a lot of information and very wordy, in my opinion. So it was a bit much. So I just summarized for the kids. But if I was going to leave anyone out so far, it would be that one. One thing we are doing is with O Freedom, there is a K through 2nd section, which is a separate curriculum. There's a 3rd through 7th, which is a separate curriculum, and then there's a high school unit. So I bought the K through 2nd as well as the 3rd through 7th, and what we are doing is, how O Freedom works is there are 5 weeks, and then that 6th week is a dig deeper week, and that could be to catch up on reading. That could, as it says, dig deeper into more information about what you were learning, and it gives you suggestions on things to research or things to watch. So what I have chosen to do for that is that 6th week is when we choose to use the O Freedom for Beginners, the K through 2nd. And that's just a series of picture books. So for example, this is one of the picture books we use throughout them, and it does have discussion questions with every book. So you can see here are the discussion questions. And it does align perfectly with the 3rd through 7ths, align with what we learned in that. So I'm just taking 3 picture books, we're doing the picture books, we're doing the discussion questions, and then there are more crafty things to do in this section. So for example, for The Village That Vanished, one of the books we read, there was a lot to talk about basket weaving and carrying baskets on your head. So we calculated, apparently you're supposed to be able to hold something like 20% of your body weight on your head according to how they do it. And we did the calculations of that. We tried different things to see how much weight they could hold while walking, and that was fun. But it also has things like, they were talking about basket weaving, so we made granola little baskets out of food, and they got to put yogurt and fruit and things in that. So it does have that crafty stuff if you're into it. But again, I don't want to spend 5 weeks doing crafts. I want to spend 5 weeks talking about really important history. And then that 6th week, we do the K through 2nd, where we take the picture books and then we pick a couple different activities to do. So for example, this last one we did the Humane Project, which is looking at, we read the book Our Skin, and it talks about different skin color and tone and things like that. And the project for that was the Humane Project, which is a series of pictures that photographers do, and it matches the background to the person's skin tone. And the project for that was to do a self-portrait. And the first thing you do is find the skin color, your tone, and you paint that or you draw it. We have the Colors of the World colored pencils, and we have the crayons. So I just had them use that instead of trying to mix the paint up and try to get the right skin color, because I think that would take a while. So this was my 6-year-old self-portrait, and my kids are pretty pale like me, so it's kind of hard to tell, but you can see this is the coloring of their skin. And we talked about how even though we're related, that they came from my body, that we have different skin colors, and looking at the uniqueness of everybody's skin tone. This was my 10-year-olds, you can see that. So that was a really fun project and works on multiple ages. And then the read alouds have been really great. We did Seas Behind Trees, and we did Seas Behind Trees, and we did The Game of Silence. The Game of Silence is one of the books in the Birch Bark House series. So we read it last year, and it was a continuation of that story, and a great I love that they give a voice to the Native people or Indigenous people we're talking about. I really like that, again, it's talking about topics that I think a lot of curriculums avoid. So this is a completely secular curriculum, but it does talk about religion and in what role religion had on it. We had an entire chapter on the doctrine of discovery, the idea that God gave these people the right to take over this land, given a scripture quote that was taken, and we talked about that. Now, we are a Christian family, specifically Lutheran, specifically ELCA, if you're curious. So how I approach this, absolutely, I'm going to talk about how faith is misused and how scripture verses are twisted to promote bias or bigotry or hatred against another group of people, because that is definitely a thing that happens in religion. So I'm not afraid to talk about that with my kids and talk about, hey, do you see how this was used, and what are your thoughts on that with what we learn? And they're able to take their own faith beliefs, and again, they're welcome to choose their own faith beliefs, but what they're envisioning of God or gods or goddesses or whatever they want to believe, how that impacts what they are reading here. And I think if you try to remove religion completely from history and be completely secular and never talk about it, you're taking away that opportunity to learn about how religion impacted certain parts of history, because it really did, or how culturally religion is often intertwined together with a specific group or cultural tradition. So you really got to be able to talk about religion from a non-biased point of view, but that doesn't mean you can't have any type of faith background. I'm never pushing my own Christian beliefs or agenda on my children. It's let's talk about what happened in this time period. Also to that, there's an entire chapter on Christian nationalism, which I was like, yes, absolutely. I do not believe this is a Christian nation. If that offends you, you are definitely on the wrong channel. This is not a Christian nation. And I think you see a lot of that in a lot of history curriculum, especially pointed towards homeschoolers, because there's a lot of conservative views out there. And that's not me. I'm very open-minded, and I want to talk about it all. I'm not going to shy away from talking about the misuse of Christianity to cause harm to other people. And what I really like about this curriculum is, while talking about doctrine of discovery, at the same time we're talking about how there were friars who were preaching sermons to Columbus's relatives and the colonizers, that what they were doing to these indigenous people was wrong. But this is not what God wanted. They did not want to bring harm to God's people or people in general. And I think that's great to get those different perspectives, that these people misusing religious quotes to justify their actions. And there's this group of people who are religious leaders who are saying, this is wrong. What you're doing to your fellow man is wrong. And of course, the colonizers had the friars sent back because they didn't want to spread that kind of information around. But I think having that duality is amazing, and I think that's what we need from history. Multiple perspectives, not being afraid to touch on difficult areas, even when it's talking about faith practices, that you should never be putting your own faith on a pedestal to justify, genocide. So, rant there, but I really do love this curriculum so far, and I'm so glad we used it. But that is everything we are using for group subjects, and it's been going really well. I feel like we get so much of our growth as people through our group subjects, like our philosophy, our history. Oh, which reminds me, I forgot social justice. I got so ranty, I forgot social justice. So we are using Mint and Bloom, Power of the People, and it's a great curriculum. It's something I found this past couple months and integrated it in. So this is the spine for it, and it just has, every letter has a specific movement. So for example, B was for Black Lives Matter, and it talks about the movement Black Lives Matter, how it was created, why it was important. It talks about the NFL controversy of players taking a knee during the national anthem, and discussion questions. I really like that it has discussion questions within each, and it's just a couple pages you're reading. It's like 3 or 4 pages. And then it has activities. So I thought I'd show you guys some of the activities that we've been working on. My kids have really been enjoying it. There's also video links that you can click on. So for example, when we were doing Earth First, the people that were trying to save the redwood trees in California, We learned about redwood trees and the growth and the importance they have to the environment. But going to Black Lives Matter, they got to design buildings that would have posters or flyers that would promote Black Lives Matter and why it's important. They got to make clothing that would talk about Black Lives Matter. In our day of life, I showed this. For the tree protesters, they made a tree protesting costume. They made a tree house for the people that would live in the trees during the protest. Another one they did was recently we did the Federal Reserve Theater, and that was part of the New Deal to educate people and provide jobs and entertainment and things like that, theater productions. And often the journalists and writers would take newspaper article titles and turn them into plays. And that, of course, led to controversy, and some politicians had some issues with it, and ultimately the program was shut down. But the activity was to take newspaper articles and write down or draw the article name, and then you had to act it out, and the other people had to guess what it was. So what I had my daughter do is I had her, because she loves reading National Geographic, I had her read a couple National Geographic titles and put them down, and she acted them out. And then I put down some article titles that I'm aware of and I acted them out. It was really cool to see it come to life, like actual news coming to life. My kids really enjoyed that. So that's just a sampling of some of the things we do. Something my 6-year-old really likes about the curriculum is it always has these spotlights on people we're talking about. She loves to color them and design them and use them for playing. So that has been a really nice, and again, we're learning so much. Most of these movements we're talking about, I haven't even been aware of. And it's not like they happened, 70 years ago. Some of them are more recent. So it's really nice to be talking to my kids about this. Social justice has always been a main subject in our homeschool, and it always will. I do have a video talking about how and why I teach social justice, but I think, again, this is talking about the growth of the person. There's academic growth, learning your math, learning how to read, but then there's growth as an individual, learning about the world, and that entails learning about the things that are wrong with the world or how people are mistreated because of X, Y, or Z, or because of X, Y. But whatever the issue is, the point of teaching my kids about this is so that they can grow up and be world changers. They can change the things that are mistreating people, and I try to empower them as much as I can. They are 6 and 10, but they are fully capable of having a voice in this and creating change. And a lot of things this is a hard thing to talk about, yes, but what can we do? Putting the power back in on yourself as what can you do to be a catalyst for change. You might be a tiny ripple in the water, but enough tiny ripples will make a wave of change. So that is something I always try to empower my children with. And when we talk about difficult subjects, it's hard, but they have the power within to cause change. If I completely ignore the problems in the world, then I'll just be perpetuating a system that promotes those problems. So that is why social justice is really important, and we are loving this curriculum. My kids are really loving the activity, and it works perfectly for my 6 and 10-year-old. So that is everything we are using for group subjects. If you have any questions about anything in particular, leave it in the comments below. If not, thank you for watching.